Hi. For the past year or more, some friends from Meditation New Zealand and myself have been running a mindfulness and meditation program at Auckland's maximum security prison at Paremoremo. When I tell people about the program, you get this response. It's, what's it like working with criminals? I find it very unfortunate and disconcerting how we as a society tend to dehumanize criminals. Even in our justice system, we tend to see this very commonly, creating this us and them mentality. If we look at the meaning of the word crime, it is an action or omission which constitutes an offense and is punishable by law. As a society, we tend to overly focus upon this label criminal and not really give due recognition to the other labels which may help identify this person we're speaking of. Such other labels could be father or mother, son or daughter, husband, wife, an uncle, an auntie, a member of a family or a community, a social group or faith-based community, a holder of a specific profession or skill or talent. And when we do this, when we overly focus just on the label criminal, I think it really creates serious challenges for real reform. Isn't it better for us to focus on these other relationships and reinforce them, and then add a father who is also a criminal, or a father who has committed a crime, a husband, a wife, a mother who has committed a crime? What this would do, it will more effectively focus us all on the possibility and the need for the reform of that individual. When I say that, it's like there is often the mentality of in dealing with criminals, you lock them up and throw away the key. And what we're seeing within the within the jail system, the penitentiaries, they become breeding grounds and universities for increased criminality. And then when we turn the people loose out into society again, we wonder why there is such a high recidivism rate. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is begin to look at these other relationships or connections the individual has to society, and really look at ways in which we can strengthen those. A good example would be some of the video we may see from time to time on the news or in other places of former really hardened gang members, not former, but hardened gang members who are now aging, and they all quite often share this common concern for, if not their children, their grandchildren. And many of them speak about what it is that they have been through and don't want to see their children or grandchildren have to go down that same path. If the person could have been more aware of these relationships and placed greater emphasis and value on these relationships earlier in their life, then it would produce the same results. So there is this need for us to recognize that our life experience as individuals and as a society is largely going to be driven by our actions. Our actions shape our immediate or future life or life experiences. So one of the messages that we share with the people that we're dealing with is that it doesn't matter which side of the wire you may be on. Many of us are prisoners even before we were put into jail. We may be prisoners of greed, of anger, fear, desperation, lust, loneliness, isolation, bigotry and prejudice, and many other negative things. True freedom is not just changing my physical location, moving from one side of an enclosure wall or barbed wire to the other, but it is actually becoming free, to not be enslaved by these emotions or feelings which are drivers for destructive behavior, to be free to really make good choices in life. We therefore call our program Freedom from the Inside. That true freedom will be experienced by all of us, whether we're inside a penitentiary or just a member of society, any member of society. When we become free from the constraints of these very negative things which may be, which will always be having an unduly negative control on our life, then we have the real chance to experience freedom. So wherever we are today, it is largely a product of decisions that we have made and actions that we have taken. I think this is a thought that all of us need to take some time to really reflect on and consider. You know, some people may say that, well, I had a really shitty start to life and that makes me who I am. I mean, something that is particularly heartbreaking is the reality that many of the people inside our prisons have had really bad childhood. They've never really experienced what it is to be loved and to be protected. And that has largely contributed to how they've gone about processing things and the choices that they have made. But to say that where I am is all because of my shitty childhood, I don't agree with that. I mean, regardless of how we get started in life, it is about what we do in any given situation that will determine outcomes going forward, and that which means the type of life that we will have. So the problem lies not so much in inequalities that people may come from in their background, but how we go about making decisions. One of the saddest things I feel is when people display or express the feeling of powerlessness. I don't have it's not going to be a possibility. I don't really have the opportunity. I don't have the chance. I don't have enough control of my life or of my emotions or whatever to really be totally in charge of my life. So it's critically important for us all to understand that I can affect my future. I do have the ability to determine what my experience of life is going to be. I can't control where I was born, the circumstances I was born into, the socioeconomic status of my family, lack of education when I was younger. I don't have control over that. But the choices that I make going forward and what I decide to do with my life is really going to determine what my experience of life is really going to be. This doesn't mean that everyone is, always going to have the same economic outcome in life, for instance, but we all have the equal opportunity for actual happiness. Of course, someone says, well, if you don't have sufficient financial resources, how can you be happy? And that is a very naive and not very informed statement. The truth is that you cannot buy happiness. You can buy lots of different kinds of experiences, you can buy lots of goodies, you can buy lots of things that stimulate appetites, but this does not buy you happiness. There was a video I saw somewhat recently by the English comedian, can't remember his name, Brand was the family name, he's quite well known, and he was talking about his experiences in life with addiction, substance abuse, and because he was very well known, he had lots of money, he said, he loved alcohol, he loved cocaine, he loved heroin, but it was killing him, and he was gravely unhappy. He may have experienced so much of, opportunities for what I'll call sensual happiness, but it was not bringing him actual fulfillment and happiness in life. So it is a big lie that you can buy happiness, but it is often a foundational reason why many, not all, but many criminal acts are performed. People really get this idea. I mean, and we're pounded, relentlessly pounded with this idea that the more money we have and the more sensual experience that we have, the more goodies we can buy, the more stuff we can consume, the happier we'll become. And then we wonder why people go out and maybe steal money or engage in what's considered illegal or illicit activity in order to come up with money to do all this stuff. Well, we're feeding this message to everyone. How someone chooses to act on it through legitimate occupation or an illegal activity, fundamentally, the driver is the same. So, in my observation, one of the great drivers for crime, one of the great drivers for crime is what I would call relationship deficits. And what I mean by this is that strong interpersonal and societal relationships can act as a real deterrent for people to engage in criminal acts. Therefore, when somebody is deprived of strong and healthy interpersonal relationships or feels isolated from a broader society, they do not experience the pressure that comes from these things not to act in a destructive way that is harmful for others that we are in relationships or close to, and society as a whole. You'll also see the phenomena that not being raised in a loving and close-knit family environment and being encouraged to, in your personal growth, and being socially isolated can actually create what I would describe as a need. The individual will feel the need for affiliations or relationships, for instance, with gangs. The desire to be loved, to be recognized, to be embraced, to be held close, to feel that there is some shelter there. I know this sounds quite difficult I know a lot of people will have a hard time processing this, but if you actually think about it and you talk to the individuals that are very much involved in this kind of situation, particularly with young people that are raised around these environments, you will see that these are actually true. So without both knowledge and wisdom, and I'm making a distinction, knowledge I'm defining as being a right understanding of things, and the wisdom is the application of that knowledge in my life and the choices I make. Some people can know what is right and what is wrong, but they lack the wisdom to make the appropriate choices and to take the appropriate courses of action. And this often comes from the reality that we are constantly fed this message that we should not exercise restraint, that we should impulsively act on things all the time. Wisdom helps us in that regard. So with knowledge and wisdom, all criminals can be reformed. Without knowledge and wisdom, all of us can become criminals. So both of these things are true. A criminal can be reformed through knowledge and wisdom, and they must also, of course, possess the desire for that change in their life. So to move things from just a mental understanding of what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what's going to have not a good outcome means that there has to be some internal change. So there is therefore a need for transformative processes which actually help lift this veil of hopelessness and ignorance and isolation and generate a real spiritual awakening in an individual. And this, of course, will lead to actual happiness. So the foundation for personal transformation in its deeper sense lies in understanding that above all other labels, I am a human being and everyone is my brother or sister. If I actually felt that within the core of my being in a very personal way, it means I would have great difficulty causing harm to any other person on the basis of some external label or some external identity. But better than this appreciation of my humanity is the appreciation of my actual spiritual existence, that I am an eternal spiritual being and I am having a temporary material experience. This means that the body I have on, it has a birth and it will have a death. I am the being within it, occupying it and experiencing the world through this medium. The more I am able to cultivate my awareness of my true spiritual identity, which is referred to as Wairua. This is the actual deeper meaning of this word Wairua, or soul or spirit. The more I'm aware of this, the more empowered I become, empowered and driven to make much better choices in life, empowered to act responsibly, empowered to take ownership of my choices and actions, empowered to actually now feel love and compassion, and to experience as a result real joy and peace, something that eludes many of us. This deeper experience is possible for anyone and everyone. It is about discovering or uncovering who I actually am. I was so moved by one of the inmates who was a gang member and an enforcer. He had been responsible for many very violent and criminal acts. And he spoke about how he has now realized that in his whole life, he has allowed others to define who he is. And then he lived a life where he was simply living out other people's definition. If they told him he was really badass, that he was a tough guy, that people should fear him, that he was powerful like this, then he said he spent his life living up to those labels. And he has now realized that he actually doesn't know who he actually is. And he has developed this deep sense of coming to really learn that and experience that, and to begin to live that truth. And he said that if he could live that truth after discovering who he really was, he feels that his life would utterly transform and change. He would not feel weak in the sense of feeling compelled to live up to other people's dreams and expectations, for example, and therefore to engage in acts that sometimes really didn't make him feel good at all. So this change, what it's going to really bring it about, and why it is more than what's going to move it from being a mental understanding to a deep experience. It will be the meditation and the mindfulness exercises which we teach. Now these exercises, these meditation and mindfulness techniques, they're extremely ancient, and they are very authentic practices that have worked for individuals for millennia. And they make it so that the practitioner actually internalizes this wisdom and makes the experience of real enlightenment not just possible, but actually real. The response to our programs over the last year have really been extraordinary and have deeply moved all of us who are engaging in them. The transformation that we see is very real. The realizations and the new understandings which people develop actually really begin to change them. Our experiences of teachings, or rather teaching within the prisons, has provided us now with enough information to be able to tailor a program of instruction and practice, which will also become an online or a correspondence course that we can offer. So we are currently working on that and exploring appropriate delivery systems to make it so we can offer this opportunity nationally. So I hope that you will follow us as we seek these much needed changes within the prisons and within our society. Not these changes, not just of so-called criminals, but also of ourselves as individuals and as a society as a whole. So I look forward to being able to share with you more information about this and to solicit perhaps feedback and even assistance as we move forward. Thank you very much.